If you have a Bible, turn with me to John chapter 14. We're going to be in John 14 this morning, and we'll be looking at verses 1 through 6 today. John chapter 14, verses 1 through 6 is where we're going to be today. And we're in the 6th week of our I Am series, had a little break last week on it, as we're looking at the self-identity of Jesus, or who did Jesus identify himself as? How did he identify himself? And we're looking at what he said, what that means, and what it means in my life. What difference does it make? Who Jesus claimed to be. And this week, as you're turning there, this week we're looking at, again, the 6th statement of his. You'll find it in verse 6 of John 14. John 14, verse 6 says this: Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." I've taught this passage, I've taught this verse a number of different times in my ministry, but somehow I almost always miss the heart of Jesus in this. I don't know. It's not that I didn't know it, but somehow I always miss it. It doesn't always come out when I'm teaching this passage. In John chapter 1, verse 14, it says that Jesus came full of grace and truth. Not a half a tank, not a quarter tank, not an eighth of a tank, not running on fumes, not the gas lights on. No, Jesus came full. He is full of grace and truth. Not grace or truth, but grace and truth. You cannot have one without the other in Jesus. You don't get the truth without the grace, and you don't get the grace without the truth. They go together in him. They go together like sugar stirred into a cup of warm coffee like I had just before I came over here. You can't remove one from the other in this. And as I've taught through this in the past, I notice about this, I always get the truth in the text, but I miss the grace somehow. And the truth is the things that Jesus said and what it means, and we're going to look at that. And I always looked at this text strictly in terms of what it teaches about the exclusivity of Jesus Christ in salvation. In other words, there is no other way for a man to be saved except by Jesus Christ. And the text does teach that, and it is true. That is the truth. But I miss the grace. The grace in this is why he says it. What is the situation in which Jesus is speaking this truth and grace? What's the context he's speaking into? When you look at the why did Jesus say it? What's the situation that arose that led him to say this? Then you begin to see the heart of Jesus in this. And I don't want you to miss his heart here the way that I miss his heart for some reason. You find the heart of Jesus from this text there in verse 1. Verse 1 says, "Let not your hearts investment." When you know the context, when you know what's going on in Jesus' life, it's an incredible thing for him to say, "Let not your hearts be troubled." I don't know if you know anybody, but do you know anyone that no matter what it is they're going through, no matter how hard the situation they find themselves in, when you talk to them, they only want to talk about you? Do you know anybody like that? Doesn't matter what they're going through, they always want to know how you are. They always want to know, how are you doing in this? They want to make sure that you're okay. And they could be going through, the most difficult circumstance in all their lives, but they want to make sure that you're good. And so you'd be trying to check in on them, you'd be trying to comfort yourself, and a few minutes in, you'll catch yourself, like before you even realize it, going, "Oh, they did it again. They're talking about me again." Like I'm trying to comfort them, and they're comforting me. That's Jesus here. This is the most turbulent time in Jesus' life that he's going through right there in this moment. And he's the only one. He's tried to explain to the disciples what's about to happen literally within hours of this statement here, what's going to happen to him. But they don't get it and they don't understand. But Jesus knows perfectly well what's about to happen to him. He knows that he's about to go out from there, be betrayed by one that was supposed to be close to him, be arrested there in the garden, be taken and put on trial in this mock nighttime trial, be beaten and flogged and mocked and tortured, and then hung up on a cross and killed for the sins of the world. And in those moments before it happens, when he knows it's about to happen, notice what Jesus is doing. He's turning it back to the disciples, making sure that they're okay. Making sure they're going to be okay because he's leaving them. That is Jesus' heart. That's the heart of the Lord. It's the grace that goes along with the truth. And so he says, let not your hearts be troubled. What is a troubled heart? What does it mean to have a troubled heart? Well, it's a heart that's been stirred up. That's literally what it means. You think about taking a big rock and throwing it into a still pond. What happens to the water? When you throw a rock into a still pond, it stirs the waters of the pond up. You see all the ripples. You see all the waves that are created there, and that is the picture of having a troubled heart. So when Jesus says here, let not your hearts be troubled, you need to understand that he's not talking to men with still and quiet hearts. He's talking to men whose hearts have been stirred up. He's talking to people who've had this big boulder dropped into their hearts and their lives, and now he's telling them, stop your hearts from being troubled. Not don't start. They've already started. Their hearts are already turbulent. They're already stirred up, and he said, stop your heart here from being troubled. Now, why are the disciples troubled? We've seen good reason why Jesus might be troubled. He knows what's about to happen. But why are the disciples troubled here? Well, they're troubled, they're stirred up because everything in their lives is now becoming very chaotic. Everything that had provided them stability for all of the past 3 years of their lives is in the process of changing all around them. How many of you know that change, major change in our lives, stirs our hearts up with trouble, right? Everything they thought was going to happen now, it's starting to get unwound. That they thought Jesus was going to be king, right? You know that. They thought they were marching to Jerusalem for him to take over. They thought they were going to be his right-hand man in this new kingdom. They thought they signed up for a revolution. And so what had they done? They left everything. They left their jobs to follow Jesus. You think about that. They left their jobs. Not just a job, but their livelihood. They left their families, many of them, to follow Jesus. They left their friends to follow Jesus. They left their place in society, their place in respectable society to go and follow Jesus. Somebody said they burned their boats and blew up the bridges behind them, all to follow Jesus. That's what he told them to do. They were just listening to Jesus. And now he's telling them, on the other hand, one of you will betray me. They don't know who. One of you will betray me. He's telling them, I'm going to be delivered up to be killed. He's telling them, I'm going away, and even though you left everything in your lives to follow me, you can't follow me where I'm going. And they're thinking, you told us to follow you, and now you're telling us we can't follow you. You see this happen several different times leading up to this text. Where I'm going, you cannot come. So they're thinking, you told us to follow you, we left everything to follow you, and now you're telling us we can't follow you. What do you mean you're leaving us? Where are you going? Why can't we come? How many times when you were a kid did you ask your parents, hey, can I come with you? And they say, no, you can't. I'm going to work. I've got things I have to do. And you're in your little child mind, didn't understand why I can't come with my dad. Why can't I come with you? But we had things to do that they couldn't be a part of. And that's what Jesus is saying right here. Why can't we come? Peter said in chapter 13, Jesus, why can't we come with you? You're telling us you're leaving us. Why can't we come? He said, I'll die for you, Jesus. He didn't understand. They didn't understand. And so their hearts are all stirred up. And I wonder this morning if anyone has a troubled heart in here. I wonder if there's anybody this morning that have had a rock thrown into your life and has stirred up the waters of your heart. Maybe it's a little rock. Maybe it's just a pebble. You know, a little pebble still makes ripples, right? It doesn't have to be a big thing, but maybe you've had a little pebble thrown into your life. When I was writing this message, it's been like a week and a half ago now, but when I was writing this message, I realized I needed a cup of coffee. So I go make my coffee, and I realize I don't have any sugar in my little sugar shaker, and I have to go to the pantry to refill it. And so I did what I do, and I found it, and somebody had put the sugar on the top shelf all the way at the back, the big bag of sugar. And so I reached for it, and right in front of it is this little container of chocolate sprinkles, little container of chocolate sprinkles. And rather than move the sprinkles and then get the sugar down, I thought I'll just maneuver the sugar out from behind the container there, and then I'll be all right. But of course, you would know, as I'm trying to write about a troubled heart being stirred up, that's not what happened. And I knocked the canister off, and I don't know if you've ever tried to do this, but there are a lot of sprinkles in a very small container. And as soon as it hit the floor, the lid flew off, and little rat poop-sized chocolate sprinkles went all over the pantry and all over the floor. I mean, everywhere. A week and a half later, we were still finding little mouse outhouse looking things of sprinkles in our floor. So I won't tell you how I responded in that moment and for the next 30 minutes as I tried to clean it up. But I tell you, my heart in that moment was stirred up. It was just a little pebble. It was a little pebble, but my heart was stirred up. And I spent 30 minutes cleaning up. Then I had to go sit back down, literally at this moment in the sermon. At this moment in the sermon, I sat back down with a lukewarm cup of coffee, no sugar. I didn't even get the sugar. And write about a troubled heart. So maybe that's you this morning. Maybe it's just a little pebble. Maybe you spilled some chocolate sprinkles, and your heart's gotten a little bit stirred up here. But maybe for somebody this morning, maybe it's a boulder. Maybe it's not a pebble, it's a boulder that's fallen into your life. Maybe it's an earthquake that led to a tsunami, and that's the kind of stirring that's going on in your heart this morning. Maybe your life has changed around you like it had for the disciples. Maybe everything that you thought it was going to be is now coming undone in your life. Maybe everything's changed. Maybe everything is becoming chaotic. Maybe there's no stability in your life. Maybe your heart this morning is stirred up with great trouble. But into the midst of that stirring, Jesus speaks a word into our troubled heart of calm and tranquility. He said, "Let not your hearts be troubled." That's His grace. That's His heart. Jesus wants us to live with a tranquil heart, not a troubled heart. And that's what this is about. This is about the water settling back down after the rock's been thrown into the pond. That's our key truth. Jesus is the way, truth, and life that calms our troubled hearts. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life that calms our troubled hearts. With that in mind, we're going to see the comfort of Jesus in three ways. We're going to see a plea, a place, and a path. And there's three responses there: a plea, a place, and a path. And the response is trust, wait, and walk. Trust, wait, and walk. So number one, let's look at the plea. Second half of verse 1, Jesus says, believe in God, believe also in me. So He said, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. Now you may not know this, but there are a number of different ways that you could translate this or interpret this. It's not 100% clear from the grammar how this is meant to be read, but I read it as a statement of fact followed up by a command. He said, you believe in God, believe in me. It's a statement of fact followed by a command. He starts with this fact, something that's absolutely obvious to them, something that they just take for granted. The disciples believe in God, full stop. Do you believe in God this morning? Do you believe in God? If so, Jesus then utters this command next. You believe in God, believe in me. That's the command. You believe in God, so believe in me. And what He's doing is equating belief in God with belief in Himself. He's saying those two things are the same thing. You can't believe in God unless you believe in Jesus. And that is a huge, huge statement. I would never say something like that, and you probably would never say something like that either. Can you imagine making that statement to someone and trying to get them to trust you? They're having a hard time believing what you're saying, and this is the way that you tell them to trust you. Hey, you believe in God, don't you? Well, if you believe in God, you can believe in me. We would never do that. We would never put ourselves on God's level. That's an insane thing to do. Unless you and God are so intertwined that you can say like Jesus does in verse 9, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. They're one. Jesus and the Father are one. So he said, you believe God, right? Well, believe me. Believe in me. But understand this belief here. This belief, we believe a lot of different things. We intellectually assent to a lot of things. But this belief is more than just some intellectual assent to a statement that Jesus makes. It is that. It is, I believe every single word that comes out of the mouth of Jesus. Why should I believe Jesus? Why? Because he is the truth, right? So I believe, I assent to everything that Jesus says, but to believe him means that I actually trust him. I trust him. It's not just I accept the thing that he says is true, it's that I put my trust into him. We're doing some work at our house right now, and one of the things we're doing is we're building a new garage. We're having a new garage built. One that I hope that I can actually park in. I've never had a garage to park in my life, and that's one of the things that we're doing. And I don't know how all this stuff works. I've never been on this side of constructing anything really, and so I don't know how it works. And so they cleared the land and graded it and then began to lay the foundation for the garage. And I came home one day when they had finished the foundation of the garage. I came home and I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, what is this giant wall doing in my yard? Like, this is not what I pictured this thing looking like. I want a garage, and I've got the Great Wall of China sitting here beside my house. What is this? And so I got a little stirred up, and I freaked out a little bit, and I called the contractor, and I'm like, hey, why is this wall here? What is this? I didn't expect to have this big giant wall here in my yard. I expected it to look a little bit, shorter and more, I don't know what. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. And he calmly just sort of explained to me, hey, this is the grade of your yard, and this is how it has to be in order for it to be even with your house, and don't worry about it. We're going to fill it in. We're going to backfill it, and we're going to put dirt in, and it's by the time it's done, it won't look like what it looks like now. It's not going to look like what it looks like now. And he didn't say this, but this is the implication, which is, you got to trust me on this. You got to trust me. You can't see it. He may have been thinking you're an idiot, but at the very least he was thinking, you got to trust me. You can't see it. I'm the contractor. I know how it's going to turn out. I said, it's going to be crazy. No, it's not going to look crazy. It's going to look good. And I'm glad I waited for him, because after I put my trust there in his word, sure enough, they got it filled in, and it looks like a normal foundation is supposed to look like. So Jesus said here, you got to trust me. You got to trust me on this. Don't be stirred up. Don't be troubled. How do I live with a tranquil heart? Trust. Trust is the first thing. It's the single biggest thing. It's trust that leads us to a tranquil heart. I keep walking in faith even when things look bad. I keep walking in faith even when I want a garage, but all I've got is a wall right now. Even when things are uncertain to me, I keep walking in faith because I know what's uncertain to me is not uncertain to him. Even when I don't know what's going to happen, I keep walking in faith because I trust him, because I know he does. So it's I walk in faith knowing that I can't see how it's going to turn out, but I don't have to see how, I just have to know him, right? That's the plea. Believe me. Take your troubled heart, your stirred up heart, and trust me. Just trust me on this. I know how it's going to turn out. You can't see it, but I know. Number two, we see the place. So you have the plea and the action, which is trust. Trust me. Number two, the place. Look at verse 2. He said, in my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. This summer was a bittersweet summer for me. My grandmother sold her house this summer. And it was the house that my grandfather had built for her 62 years ago. 62 years is a long time to live in the same place. And for 62 years, that home, that place stood at the center of my family. And before they sold it, all the family gathered together over there, and we just took some time just remembering. As we said, and we thought back on all the things that we had experienced there, all the time over there. All the time we gathered at holidays, all the time I spent there growing up. And this place, this home, it was a place of joy. It was a place that was filled with laughter. It was a place that was filled at all times with life. And I walked around there. I walked outside, and me and my brother went and found the place at my papa's shed that he'd built where he'd scratched mine and my brother's initials into the concrete back when we were the only two. We were the first two of many grandkids. And he scratched our initials in there. And I found I'd forgotten it was there, but we found our initials there from back in 1982 or something. And we walked around remembering, sword fights out in the yard, and we remembered all the times that we gathered together around the table and how food was so central to everything that happened in that house. And we would gather at the table, and we would all just laugh so hard, and we would hear my papa's stories, and we would all annoy all the women. All the men would annoy the women because all the Phillips men were so loud, and all the times that I spent the night over there growing up and listening to my papa snore and shake the walls with his snoring, and that and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other memories. That place that is gone was home to me. I didn't even live there, but it was home. And it was home for all my family, even when they didn't live there. They always came back to it. It was always home. And every so often, in fact, probably more often than I'd like to admit, when I'm tired or when I'm weary or when I'm really, really just exhausted and I'm laying down and I'm trying to go to sleep, my mind will take me back to that home with this intense longing in my heart that almost hurts. Do you have anything that you long so much for that it hurts you almost? And I think back about that place, and I'm just trying to sleep, and my mind just goes there. And there's such a longing that it hurts in my heart, but I know I can't go back. I can't go back to it anymore. It was a wonderful, long season in my family, but now we experience it all only in our memories. We can only look back at it. And I don't say all of those things. I don't say that from a place of sadness, even though it is sad. I say it from a place of desire, and I say it from a place of hopefulness in my heart, because I believe that intense longing that I experience to go back to that place is just a shadow of the desire in my heart and in every person's heart for a greater home that's not behind you, but ahead of you. A place that you don't have to look back to, but a place that you look forward to. A place that'll satisfy you and fill you and comfort you, not just for a season in your life, but for all of eternity. Jesus tells us here, I have a home ahead. Verse 2, he says, in my Father's house are many rooms. This is my heavenly home. This is my true home. And every one of us, we get so tied up to our earthly home. But this world is not my home. And my citizenship is not here. My citizenship is in another place. That's my eternal home. And it's a home that even the best earthly home that you could possibly imagine is just a pale imitation of it. And Jesus says here, there's many rooms in this house. When my family would come home for holidays, Christmas or whatever, Thanksgiving, they would pile in every conceivable corner of my grandmother and grandfather's house. If they didn't get hotels, motels, Airbnb, whatever, they were all going to stay there. So you had people on the couches, on the chairs, on every bed, every conceivable corner, but not this house. Jesus said, in my Father's house, there's many rooms. There's room for all who would come. And this picture of this home, my Father's house, would have taken the disciples in their minds to this imagery of a lush, large, rich home with gardens and courtyards and a place of rest and quiet and comfort and peace, a place to call home. Jesus said, that's my Father's house, and there's room in it. But then he also says in 2, not only is there room in it, but he said, I go to prepare it for you. This is why I can't be with you for a time. I've got to go get it ready. What does that mean? Does that mean Jesus is like putting his carpenter belt on, getting his tool? He was a carpenter after all. Is he, doing the trim work and getting everything put in place and the plumbing and all that? Is that what no, that's not what he's doing. What does it mean that I go to prepare a place for you? It means he's going to die, to be raised from the dead, and to ascend to the Father. That's how he gets it ready. He says, I'm going to get it ready. I'm going to die. You don't understand that. But I'm going to die. Why can't I come with you, Jesus? I'm going to die. It's not time for you to die yet. But then when I die, I'm going to be raised. And then when I'm raised, I'm going to be raised again. I'm going to ascend to my Father in heaven. That's what it means to be getting the place ready, to prepare the place that Jesus has for us. So he said, I got to go. But if I go, he said, I'll come again to take you where? Not just to the place, but to take you to myself, to be with me, that where I am, there you may be also. So what Jesus is teaching us is that deep, intense longing that we have in our heart for a place is not just a longing for a place, it's a longing to be with a person. It's a longing to be with our Lord, to be with the Father. That's what makes this home to us. And so they're troubled. Their hearts are stirred up. They're getting separation anxiety because Jesus is about to go. But he said, trust me. Trust me. I'm going to get a place ready for you. But if I go, I will come back to get you. So wait for me. That's the call. Wait for me. It's going to get hard. And it's going to get very hard for the disciples, but he says, wait for me. You're going to be tempted to doubt, he says, because I'm going to be gone for a while, but wait for me. Same plea to you this morning. Wait for me. If you're troubled, I know it's hard, but wait for me. I'm coming back to take you home. So there's the plea, trust me. You have the place, which is our true home in heaven in the presence of God forever. And then last you have, very briefly, the path. You have the path, the plea, the place, the path. Verse 4, Jesus says another very Jesus kind of a thing. He says, you know the way to where I'm going. I'm going away, but you know the way to where I'm going. And then Thomas, again, I love Thomas. He steps in and says a very Thomas kind of thing. In verse 5, Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? I love Thomas because he's always saying out loud the things that everybody else is thinking, right? All the disciples, none of them had a clue what Jesus was talking about, but they're all nodding. Yeah, you know the way. They're going, And Thomas goes, No, Jesus, we don't get it. We don't know what you're talking about. We don't know what this means. We don't know the way. We don't even know the place, much less how are we supposed to get there. Said, Jesus, we need a map. We don't know where you're going. We don't know how to get there. We need a map. But then Jesus said, you don't need a map. You need a man. I am the way and the truth and the life. So Jesus here is saying, I'm not showing you the way like a guide. I'm not showing you the way like a map. He's the way. And here's the truth. He's the only way. He's not just one way among many. He's the only way to the Father. He's the only way to the Father's house. He's the only way to that forever home that you, even though you may not know it, are longing for deep down inside your heart. He is the only way to a tranquil heart. How do I stop being troubled in my heart? Jesus said, I'm the way. I'm the way. Let not your heart be troubled. Jesus, how do I do it? I'm the way. And that's Jesus' heart for you this morning. That's the Father's heart for you this morning. He's the path you walk on to be made right with God the Father. And some of you, I don't know, who may have tried walking down other paths. I don't know what path you've taken. Maybe you've taken some path of religion. Maybe you've taken some path of science, or maybe some other path. But I'm going to tell you, whatever other path you take, if you're not on the way, then you're lost. Then you're lost. You're walking on the wrong road. That word way means the established road to get to your destination. That's pretty good. What does that mean? That means Jesus is the established road to reach the right destination. And I pray this morning that that's enough for you. That trust, that waiting, and walking down the way. I trust this morning. I believe that will calm your troubled heart and make it tranquil.